Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Wednesday, February 2nd, and a little bit ahead of a head fake to start the day today. Looked like the markets wanted to open up, pulling back now as we start the show here. So plenty of charts to dive into, plenty to talk about today. But before we do, CJ, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing well, Monty. Like you had mentioned, a little bit of a head fake this morning. Had some good earnings announcements from Google. That one was up a bunch, as well as Facebook, now Meta Platforms. They reported earnings as well. So that has been seen as the general catalyst for positive price action throughout the equity market throughout this week. We'll see if that keeps up. Of course, we have a jobs report coming Friday, which is going to be very influential. Typically, they always are when we get these, usually the start of each month. So definitely something to watch for this Friday. As for Bitcoin, the thing that was a bit concerning from the bullish perspective is that we just didn't get above 38K, even when the stock market had opened up very bullish to start the day. We've still, ever since, been kind of falling down and just had some generally overall weak price action, now trading at approximately 37.7. So yeah, just unable to reclaim that 38K level. I'm excited to get into the charts and more, though. A lot to discuss today. How you doing, Monty?
I'm doing well, doing well. Ready to dive into some charts because I think there's, like I said, plenty to talk about. One thing in particular, CJ, that I've been seeing a lot on Twitter recently is that, downward sloping trend line that Bitcoin just does not seem to be able to break. I know you've been keeping an eye on that. And, I think I have a little bit of a justification as to why, we're kind of seeing that sort of price action or sort of retest of that downward sloping trend line. So I'm excited to get into it. But you want to start us off with some charts?
Yeah, let's start with Bitcoin because we had actually had a really good question about the downward sloping trend line and just how to interpret that. So I want to get into that. All right. So the question that was asked yesterday was, I said that I typically don't use upward sloping trend lines as support levels, and I don't use downward sloping trend lines as resistance levels. As you can see, in this hypothetical particular point, this was not a great area to buy unless you had confirmation of price action in the direction you wanted to trade. However, the way that I like to use these is not as support and resistance levels, but rather to identify when trends have ended. So as long as this upward sloping trend line remained intact, so did the uptrend. However, once we fell below it and were unable to maintain that level, ultimately then you can say, all right, well, then the uptrend is probably going to be paused here for a little while. And so if you take that same type of approach now with the downward sloping trend line, it's not as if, I'm going to sell every time we get to this level. Quite the contrary. I'm probably just going to I'm just going to probably be flat and see how price reacts. Because if we are to get a short squeeze or a flush break above this level, consolidate and form kind of a bottoming inverse head and shoulders pattern, something like that, then I'd be looking for continued bullish price action to the upside. But we haven't gotten that yet. We still are maintaining this downtrend. And until we don't, that's just kind of how we need to remain disciplined. Also, another thing on Bitcoin that we can take a look at is this kind of upward sloping trend line. And if you go and take a look at this on a 4-hour time frame, it was kind of a tentative bear flag, maybe a ascending triangle, if you really wanted to call it that. But overall, the same type of idea applies. If we lose this upward sloping level, then we could be, due for a retest of potentially the bottom of this range, roughly 33 or 34. So that's what I'm looking at. One last thing I do want to share, because this has been a pretty notable indicator, is just the Stochastic RSI. Let me remove this one. Okay. So first of all, let me cover the question. All right. So bearish crossover. Each time we've had one of these historically, they've typically marked local tops. And that was during a downtrending market. So throughout that downtrend, you're looking to sell when the trend becomes overbought like this. But you'll probably ask me, okay, well, what do you do then when price remains above and overextended at that area for a very long time? We were in an uptrend. So you have to understand the trend bias when you're using the Stoch. And due to the fact that we were in an uptrend during this time, when we're following the direction of the trend, the Stoch or the RSI, or many oscillators for that matter, can remain in overbought territory for a very long period of time. So you don't really want to prioritize the overbought or like very oversold levels. For me, I like to identify the trend. And in this case, our current trend would be a downtrend. And as you can see, we remain oversold for like extended periods of time. However, when we get overbought, that's typically the period in which you want to sell short, or at least if you would have sold short historically, that would have been a very successful strategy. So, of course, it doesn't have to happen, but this is something that I think is just a little bit concerning and something to watch for here as we consolidate at this critical support level. But we can go into the S&P as well as some others, but just, first, what's going on, Monty? I figured I'd let you share some stuff too.
Yeah, thank you. That's some really good stuff, and I'm just going to kind of follow your lead a little bit here because one thing that I think you did a nice job explaining is kind of why this downward sloping trend line has been in play, and kind of its relationship with the stochastic RSI is also pretty interesting. But I want to talk about kind of the market dynamics behind this formation, and perhaps offer a reason why we're seeing this sort of price action, and then also maybe what sort of price action we'll see that kind of propels us out of this downward sloping trend line. So one thing that we've talked a lot about over the last couple of weeks is what sort of participants are in this market. And when you have this sort of prevailing downtrend following a strong uptrend like this with this sort of double top, you can assume that there were lots of short-term speculators that flooded in during this mania of period, from October to November, even into December. That's supported by on-chain data. We've talked a lot about how the profile, a lot of these investors in the second half of 2021 were short-term speculators, new traders to Bitcoin. So they were getting in on this trade. Many of them bought at the top as people, even from back here earlier in the year, were distributing, getting out of their trade and selling to new traders that were speculating at the top. And as a result, we have these legs of capitulation where each time we try to show signs of positive strength, we capitulate from short-term holders that are underwater and are quick to get out of their positions. And we've seen similar things in the past, most notably back in this kind of bearish consolidation in the summer months of 2021. We saw some strong supply absorption, but each time we came up and retested that 40K level, we were promptly rejected by profit takers, presumably short-term speculators that had bought the top up here and were looking to get out quickly and not risk a crash down to 20K, which is what a lot of people had their eyes on. So each time we came up and retested 40K, we were subsequently rejected, shaking out those short-term speculators and ultimately kind of leaving that to the long-term holders here. And that is representative in this kind of flattening out of the formation. We weren't really trending in either direction. There wasn't as much volatility. And we were kind of just slowly grinding down as the last of those short-term holders capitulated. Ultimately, that set us up for the short squeeze that propelled us out of this market. And right now, it just doesn't seem like we're quite at this level of sideways consolidation yet. There's still positive trends up and profit taking when we reach this trend line. So until we see this sort of flattening of the price action here at the bottom of the range, and kind of that rounding that you talked about, CJ, and ultimately a break out of this downward sloping trend line, it just seems like we still have short-term holders underwater, and they'll be quick to capitulate on any brief positive price action we've had. So it just seems to be like these dynamics that are driving the market. But I think that they also kind of offer an explanation for some of these technical formations that we're seeing across the space as well. So yeah, but how about we talk about the S&P and traditional equities?
Let's do it. Talked a lot about this in the room last night because there's definitely some critical levels that we're hitting. Yeah, so I mean, we've successfully gotten above the mid of this range. Still have some resistance levels tentatively at about 4,600. But overall, not a whole lot to say in terms of the S&P, just kind of still in this range. Kind of a doji candle, at least to start the day. Little tentative weakness. I'm just not sure what the catalyst is going to be to get us to new all-time highs after earnings, other than just raw price action. The other thing for Bitcoin as well, when you compare it to the S&P and NASDAQ and things of that sort, is that regardless that we had really good earnings in Google and some others, that was not enough to get Bitcoin up, even as the NASDAQ remains 0.1 or 0.5% higher today. So it's a bit concerning. I'm not saying that the NASDAQ is going to lift Bitcoin up per se, but the NASDAQ or just stocks in general going down has hurt Bitcoin quite a bit. So let's just add the RSI, take one look.
And it really does look like it was sort of a head fake this morning in all the major indexes, CJ, where we kind of bounced up above that midline on the open. But, it's more or less kind of a pseudo breakout because we're pulling back. It doesn't look like we're truly breaking above that midline. So perhaps some consolidation in that lower range, for the S&P and for the NASDAQ too.
Yeah, Qs are almost there as well. But just same type of deal. We really have to see, everything's up thus far, but, if we get a rejection tomorrow or, just continued bullish price action, then, we're going to have to see how this trend plays out. But overall, it hasn't been like hurting Bitcoin, so to speak, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's definitely something to watch for as well, is like if we kind of retest these lows for Bitcoin here in the coming days, do we start to see, a little bit of a deep pegging from the traditional equity markets? I mean, we've been so dependent on what happens in, the S&P and the Qs so far. I'd really like to see some nice divergence there. And perhaps we'll get that as we kind of retest these critical levels here and perhaps get some catalysts for price action as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with the jobs report Friday, we'll be watching that as well as some other developments in the S&P 500 along with Bitcoin. We're going to go over some potential altcoin trades in our members only service that you can definitely check out for only $7 in the link in the description below. We really appreciate that. But yeah, we're going to talk about some of the things we're trading, some ideas that we have for the market in there after this. So if you're interested in learning about it and joining a community of traders all throughout the world and much more, definitely check out the link in the description below at markrebellion.com/trycrypto. We really appreciate that, guys, and hope to see you in there. But with that being said, Monty, I'll leave you with the final word. Thank you all for watching today. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Also, don't forget, if you are a member, we have our member webinar today at 11:30 Central, where you can ask us questions, any specific tickers you want us to hit, or any just questions in general that you want us to clear up. You can ask us. That hour is all yours. So definitely check that out if you have not signed up already. But that's all we got. Please like and subscribe on the way out. It really helps the channel. But we'll see you again later today. Take care, everyone.